Hello, welcome to my talk. My name is Gloria and I'm a doctoral student at Lund University in Sweden, working in the field of metaethics. And today I want to show how some resources from social metaphysics can be fruitfully introduced into metaethics. I think that a huge part of the debates in metaethics suffers from a flaw, that is that they do not distinguish properly between two different approaches that we can take to the phenomenon of normativity or morality. I talk about normativity a bit more broadly conceived, normativity in action. And I think there is, on the one hand, the first personal perspective of agents taking morality seriously. And then, on the other hand, there is the more detached, critical perspective of social scientists, psychologists, and people who try to study how morality as a human practice evolved and how it came about the way it is. And I think both perspectives are equally valid and equally important, and these approaches should be distinguished. That's what some metaethicists do, but they also have to be integrated into one picture in order to have a comprehensible and fully informative picture of what normativity as a phenomenon in human life is. I have a presentation for you. The title of my talk is Reasons as Socially Constructed Facts. I am working with the concept of a reason in metaethics. This is only one possible concept you can work with. There is the concept of moral truth, moral goodness, ought. I think that the concept of a reason is a very clear-cut and fruitful one to work with. And reasons in these debates are conceptualized as facts to which mind can respond in reasoning. And the interesting question for metaethicists to answer is, of course, what kind of facts are these? And in this talk, I will propose that we can understand reasons in a fruitful way as socially constructed facts. So reasons are natural or ordinary facts that have normative properties in virtue of standing in certain relation to us. This is a way of speaking that I share with many others in metaethics, such as Scanlon, Skorupski, and others. What I will add to the picture is that we can further analyze this relation, and that to stand in a reasoned relation to us is to have a function in a communicative practice. And that, I will argue, is a version of social constructionism as it is used in contemporary social metaphysics. And this social constructionism has overlaps with both realism, the view that moral judgments are truth-apt and that there are facts that make them true or false. I think this is correct, and also that these facts are independent of the individuals and that we discover these facts as individuals. But on the other hand, error theorists stress that there are not really such things as normative properties in the world. I think they have a good intuition, but I would not endorse the term error theory, because I think that something I argue elsewhere, but that something cannot be an error to respond to a fact as a reason if there is no normativity. Then also it cannot be an error. And the strength of social constructionism, of introducing this approach into metaethics, is that it can accommodate the realist intuition. So I would consider myself a realist, probably, that there is a rigid normative reality that is not up to individuals, but also the intuition that motivates error theory, namely that there are no normative properties in the world out there independently of us. And an aspect I particularly like about social constructionism is that It emphasizes the historicity of normative reasons, that the space of reasons is an evolved social reality, and also that it might be changeable over time. My talk has 4 parts. First, I will introduce this idea of reasoning as responding to reasons. Then I will turn to a scientific picture that actually fits very well with this metanormative picture of reasoning as responding to reasons. Then I discuss the ontological question, and then implications and conclusions. Reasoning as responding to reasons. So in order to understand this picture, it might be helpful to consider a distinction between 2 different ways of depicting rationality, or 2 different ways of spelling out what it is to be rational. And the most widespread idea is probably that rationality has something to do with following structural, logical, or procedural requirements. In this view, a reason is only a motivational consideration that is structured in a rational way, and this is a very common and very intuitive picture when we use the word rationality. However, it has a problem that in particular Parfit pointed out, namely that what we really aim at when we are reasoning is not to get some internal process right, but to get reason-giving facts in the world right. And that's why many people say that rationality has to be ultimately defined as the capacity to perceive reasons or respond to reasons. And the fundamental thing are actually reasons, and the concept of a reason is not further analyzable. And we just have to be given a reason, understand it as a reason. And if we are not responsive to something as a reason, pointing out that it would follow from a rational principle, or pointing out anything that it would satisfy our desires, it would maximize utility. None of those things could function as a reason if we are not responsive to these considerations as reasons. And Scanlon, who develops a realism about reasons, says that there is nothing metaphysically queer about there being truths about reasons. There are no specific facts that can be reasons. Any kind of facts can be reasons. For example, the fact that the head is yellow is a reason to buy it. The fact that a policy promotes equality is a reason to implement it. Or the fact that this woman is my mother is a reason to care for her in a specific way. So this can all be kinds of facts, and that they are reasons for us is that they stand in certain relations to us in this particular instances. And what Scanlon is realist about is that there is a truth about this relation. And we can find out this truth by thinking about it carefully in the right way. If we are presented the reasons in the right way, we can respond to them. And there is no other possibility to derive normativity from non-normative facts such as desire, fulfillment, utility maximization, rational principles, whatever. And I think that this is a very plausible account, but I think it is also heuristically a bit limited. And I think, so I buy everything that Scanlon and other objectivists, realists say, but I think we can go beyond meta-ethics in this narrow conception and ask, is there anything more to say about what determines the facts to which reflective mind can respond to as reasons? So most people agree, also Scanlon, here I have Skorupski, who has in this respect the same opinion, that truths P are a reason for X if and only if X can tell, recognize, know that they are. What this does not mean is that you only have a reason if you know it, or that you are able to do what you have reason to do. That's or implies can, that's something different. But what I think that this means, and I think this is not trivial, and that it opens up an interesting perspective, that in order for it to make sense to state P is a reason for someone, there must be a possible world in which this person responds to P as a reason without having a different mind. maybe with having different knowledge, with having a different epistemic state, but with having the same mind, the same mental capacities. And that's why it makes sense to ask also psychologically, empirically, what defines or determines these possibilities of our minds. And this brings us to looking into a scientific picture of reasoning. And there's actually a recent proposal by an anthropologist and cognitive scientist, Mähringer and Sperber, who proposed that the faculty of reason can be understood as a mechanism of intuitive inferences about reasons. So reasons are the basic entities we deal with. Reasoning is dealing with reasons, and these are just facts that we perceive as reasons, and logical structural principles play at best a marginal role in this process. This is actually also a distinction from a very widespread view in the cognitive scientists proposed by Kahneman, that we have put this away for a moment, that there is perception and intuition, that this is spontaneous, effortless, associative, and then there is reasoning, that's on a different level, that's more rule governed, more controlled. In this sense, Mähringer and Sperber say that reasoning is much more like intuition. It is intuitive inference from reasons, and if we are not responsive to something as a reason, there is nothing that can convince us that it is a reason. And why did this capacity evolve? Humans, they say, use reason to justify themselves and to convince others, two activities that play an essential role in cooperation and communication. So reasoning is not like a more rational or more reflective way on the human nature, which we already have. There are not any implicit reasons, and then the rationality makes these more explicit. But instead, reason, they say, is a particular module to deal with reasons, and this, they say, has a social communicative function, and it doesn't make us like more controlled in any or more reflective in any sense. It just makes us capable to represent our actions as making sense in a social context and as being justifiable. And when we reason in the privacy of our mind, we are just proactively anticipating a situation of communication that we model, of course, according to the communicative practices in which we have been raised and in which we have been living for our previous lives. And now the interesting question is, of course, does this have any ontological implications for the metaphysics of reasons? And I think if we take into account what I spelled out previously, that affect, so what most metaphysicists agree with, that affect P is a reason for X, if and only if X's mind has the potential to respond to it as a reason, then we can ask, what do these empirical sciences say about the potential to respond to something as a reason? What Mährier's and Sperber's work says in any case is, I think, the weak thesis: a mind has the potential to respond to P as a reason if it can correctly anticipate that the community of reference will accept P as a reason in this context. That's unproblematic. A stronger thesis that would be needed to warrant it, the idea that P being a reason is a social or socially constructed fact, would be the strong thesis: a mind has the potential to respond to P as a reason if and only if it can correctly anticipate that the community of reference will accept P as a reason. And this might seem counterintuitive to many of you, I guess, since we have many examples of good reasoners in bad communities that got it right and that turned out to be right in the end. However, I would object to this view. I'm very sympathetic to such people, but I think to say that they are good reasoners is because they reason in accordance with, even if it's only a hypothetical, good community, and without a reference to any community. This sounds provocative at first, but I think I can defend this, that there would be no difference between a mad person and a good reasoner. And I think that the experience of like many individuals who differ from their community of reference and have like normative views that are, we might, from our perspective, consider as more progressive than certain others. This might come with the experience that you cannot be a full-fledged reasoner, that you still need a community that understands your reasons. And if it's a hypothetical or a future community to come, this is fine, but without a community of reference, that can also be a real community in principle. We just, as a matter of fact, cannot reason, cannot respond to any reasons. And if we can't, then according to the first premise there are no such reasons for us. And that brings me to the conclusion that being a reason is a social status. P is a natural fact that has social meaning or social significance in a particular context. And this is a version of social constructionism. Sally Hässlinger introduces the distinction between causal and constitutive construction. Something is causally constructed if and only if social factors play a role in bringing it into existence, or to some substantial extent in its being the way it is. This is true to reasons, I would say, partly. Partly the reasons are the way they are because of cultural, social factors. Partly it might be genetic reasons why we are responsive to certain things as reasons. So the causal construction part, I think, is partly social construction. And when it comes to constitutive construction, something is constitutively constructed if and only if in defining it we must make reference to social factors. And if the strong thesis is true, then reasons would be constitutively socially constructed. And one version of constitutive social construction is, as I already mentioned, social construction as social significance, a view introduced by Oster in 2018. This view is also labeled conferralism. Social meaning is conferred on an object with an alleged base property. So base property can be physical properties or other natural properties that we ascribe to an object, or that we represent this object as having. And these representations have a certain meaning in certain contexts. And I think this is also helpful to understand the process of how the communicative processes, the communication about reasons developed. Communities confer meaning on particular representations, considerations in order to enable cooperation. And individuals in turn gain autonomy and integrity by being able to justify themselves. Examples for such considerations that can function as reasons can be like equality, liberty, harm avoidance, sanctity, purity. Here I refer to Jonathan Haidt's moral foundation theory. And these are all like moral foundations, like aspects that give us reasons that do not need any further justification, and that can also be the responsiveness to these kind of considerations as reasons can vary from different, from one social context to the other. And I think that the social constructionism, here we come to the implications and conclusions of my view, can help us to make sense of what is happening in this kind of clashes between different cultures, or the situation of an individual that stands between different cultures, or between a less progressed, more progressed social stage of a community. And yeah, to sum up, reasons are natural facts that have normative properties in virtue of standing in relations to us. I agree with realists in metaethics, but I think the empirical sciences can bring us a step further to say that to stand in a reasoned relation to us is to have a function in a communicative practice, to have a socially conferred significance. The totality of reasons to which our mind can respond is a social reality, So as also Mähringer says, I have no problem saying that this is a reality and that these facts are real. They are not up to us, and they define our social and private and inner life in a significant way. But it's a social reality, a historically developed reality, and also a changing reality. And I think the debunking project that in metaphysics, especially error theorists try to pursue, and that Mähringer discusses when it comes to social construction in the gender and race debate. She's also critical of this project to say that something is social constructed is to say it is not real, or we should stop considering as relevant. This is, I think, in the context of normativity and reasons, it's even more difficult than in the context of gender and race, because if there are not really reasons in the world, then there also can be no reasons to stop living this social reality. But still, since there are many factors that change our situation, and social factors that change the way we think, and it can be helpful to understand the reality of reasons as evolved and socially constructed, and this is in line with Sally Häslinger's critical realism. So the point of social constructionism is actually not to debunk something or to say it is not real, but to say it is real, but there is a story to tell about how it is created and maintained. And in metaphysics, I think that this is a very helpful and very important complement to realist proposals that can help us to understand many situations in which people find themselves, reasoners find themselves, and it could potentially also pave the way for a theory of moral change or transformation, which is, I think, not as easy as realists might portray it. Thank you.